Over the weekend, the Gators announced that Jacksonville State defensive coordinator Vinnie Sunseri will join the defensive staff. We're going to talk about what his title is, what his responsibilities are going to be, and what it means for the Gators moving forward. Okay, so first of all, the Gators had a defensive position to fulfill because co-defensive coordinator Austin Armstrong left this offseason and became the defensive coordinator at Houston. He was not let go of his position from the Gators, but I do have a feeling, I have been told by some insiders that this was kind of a mutual decision here. And, we saw the turnaround in the Gator defense midway through the season last year, and it's never been confirmed, but I speculate that defensive play calling roles were changed. I think that Ron Roberts took over play calling at that point. I think that was the turning point of this defense. We saw it get a lot better. The first half of the season, the defense was a liability. Second half of the season, the defense was absolutely a strength for this Gator team. I think Ron Roberts had a lot to do with that. Never been confirmed. That's just what my gut tells me. Okay, so Florida hires Vinnie Sunseri. Technically, his title is co-defensive coordinator, and he's going to be our safeties coach. So a couple thoughts on this. First of all, I do like this hire. Sunseri, it's from Alabama. He played for the Crimson Tide during their 2011 and 2012 national championship teams. He knows what a winning program looks like. He knows the work that Coach Saban required those players to go through, and he knows that it works, right? That is where he met Coach Napier as well. Coach Napier was on Saban's staff during those years. So that is where this relationship stems back from. So I like that. I like bringing in a guy that understands what it takes to win. Same reason that, I like having former players on staff that participated in national championship games. Knowing what the standard is really helpful. So Sunseri played in the NFL for just 2 seasons. He was drafted by the New Orleans Saints in the 5th round. And then after that, he returned to Alabama as a grad assistant. He was there for a couple years, again, learning under Saban, kind of seeing the other side of the spectrum, right? He experienced it as a player. He then got to experience it as a grad assistant, kind of see it from the coaching viewpoint. After that, he was hired in 2020 by the Patriots, first as a defensive assistant, where he spent a year, and then he spent the next 3 years as the running backs coach for the Patriots. So again, has seen both sides of the ball. Have to think Saban recommended to Belichick that he make the hire. Certainly has learned in his very short coaching career under some really big names. He returned to college in 2024 as the safeties coach for the Washington Huskies. And then in January, this past January, just the month that we're still currently in, somehow this month feels like it has 85 million days, but he was hired as the Jacksonville State defensive coordinator. So just about 3 weeks ago. So when we look at his resume, what can we glean about this decision? First of all, with the departure of Austin Armstrong, the Gators were going to need to replace the safeties coach no matter what. I think a young and hungry Sunseri is a fine hire for this role. Honestly, we're talking about Austin Armstrong, being 30 years old, and then we talk about Sunseri. I like Sunseri's resume as both a player and his NFL experience more probably than what Austin Armstrong brought to the table. Both young guys, both able to connect with recruits and current players. I think that's important, but I do kind of like his resume prior to getting here better than I actually liked Austin Armstrong's coming here. I'll get right back to the video, but first, I appreciate BetUS for all their support. Just quickly, make sure you're betting with them and using their code YouTube150. That'll get you a 150% sign-up bonus on your first deposit. You'll also get 125% on your next 2 deposits, all up to $2,000. Whether it's the Super Bowl, college hoops, or the NBA, make sure you're betting with BetUS this year. I don't know anything about Sunseri's recruiting prowess, but I do, like I said, think that a young guy who can relate to players, can relate to recruits, has won national titles in this league should do well on the recruiting trail, right? And I almost think if he is coupled with Ron Roberts, it's kind of like a yin to the yang, right? Here's somebody with all of the knowledge in terms of scheme and development. And here is a guy that is proof is in the pudding. He did it as a player, right? And I think that's kind of a neat combination. I think that a lot of people are going to get hung up on this co-defensive coordinator title. As long as Florida is retaining Ron Roberts, I think this is essentially just a title. We know that Coach Napier is a big fan of adding lots of titles to jobs, and Sunseri had just accepted a defensive coordinator role earlier this month. So it would not surprise me if one of Sunseri's conditions for taking this job was that it had to have a defensive coordinator title attached to it, right? That's important for his resume. He thought he had gotten that notch in his belt by taking that Jacksonville State job. If he can get that same title at a much bigger school like Florida, he's going to jump at that opportunity that's going to help down the line for him, right? I just don't think it's something we should get too hung up on. We saw a huge improvement under Ron Roberts last year. And if he is the guy manning the ship for next season, then I have zero issues with Sunseri having the co-defensive coordinator title attached. Now, obviously, if the team announces tomorrow that Ron Roberts is moving on, my feelings on this change. But for now, I think this is a great staff addition. I am totally good with it. I am not one of those people that's going to freak out about like, why is he pulling from Jacksonville State? Why is he that? I mean, I'm looking at the overall resume. I'm seeing a young guy, relatable, a winner. And then I'm looking at Ron Roberts as the real captain of the defensive ship. And I am totally okay with another young guy to kind of learn underneath him. Now, the issue would come in is if Ron Roberts were to take another job or Florida were to part ways with him or something else. I would then become incredibly concerned about who they would bring in as the second co-defensive coordinator. I do not think that Sunseri has enough experience to call a defense in the SEC. In 5 years, I might feel very differently, right? But I don't, in 3 years, I might feel very differently. I don't think it would be a great decision this year, given all that I feel like is on the line for Florida. But the good news about that is I don't think that's the case. I think Ron Roberts now will be the guy moving forward. I think this is a good little recruiting ploy. I think he's probably a good safeties coach. I think that his film speaks for itself. I think he's learned under a lot of, really talented coaches so far in his short career. So I don't think this is worth freaking out about, guys. I think it's a good addition. It's a fine addition. I think it's something we should be happy about. But do you feel differently? I don't know. I mean, I want to talk about it down in the comments. Let me know, is your issue with Sunseri being hired at all, or do you just feel uneasy about the defensive coordinator title, or are you like me where you feel like it's just a title, it doesn't matter? Like, I feel like there's some czars on this coaching staff. We have 87 people with the label of associate head coach. Like, these titles don't matter. Their roles and responsibilities are what matters. I think he will coach the safeties. I think he will have a say in defensive meetings that will be led by Ron Roberts, who we saw last year has the chops to get it done, right? Our defense did a 180 mid-season. That's an incredibly difficult thing to accomplish, right? And I'm hoping our defense is going to pick up exactly where we left off. That linebacker room is incredibly impressive. Our DBs got a lot better as the season went on. This defensive line was very good. There's a lot of positive things you can say about the defense, and I think a lot of that points right back to Ron Roberts. So anyway, let's talk about it. I want to hear about it down in the comments. As always, make sure that you are subscribed to A Peek Inside Gator Football so that you don't miss any of our updates. We're going to have lots of cool stories and interviews and pieces coming your way very soon. Thanks for tuning in, and go Gators.